Good afternoon. Hello and welcome to Contramundum. I'm your host, Andrew Isker, and here is the other host, not merely the co-host, the other host, CJay Engel. How are you today, CJay?
I'm good. I am. I've been so busy, man. I've been having fun on Twitter.
Yeah, you
it's been,
have.
so I crossed 10,000 followers, which means that people like the spiciness. I think that's what it's a sign. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, you're getting way more engagement than me. Like, I think that I'm being like shadow banned. It can't be
Yeah.
that my tweets are terrible. That can't be it.
No.
Uh,
No. Nobody ever suspected that.
but
You're still a good poster.
well, thank you for that.
Welcome.
Now at least I have one fan plus my wife, so I know
Yeah.
I'll always get some likes from you. But
That's what I'm here for.
and they're all hidden, so no one knows if you like my stuff anyway.
That's true.
But yeah, that's right. That's what's going on with Twitter these days. But more seriously, and on the subject here, the title of our episode today is "Loving Heritage America a Sin?" Right? Is loving heritage America a sin? And this topic comes to us but because of Mr. Neil Shenvi. Is it Dr. Neil Shenvi? I don't really know.
Let's go with that.
We'll give him the doctorate.
Dr. Neil Shenvi.
Yeah, CJay has given him an honorary doctorate if he doesn't have one. But yeah, CJay, you're being attacked by Neil Shenvi. What's going on there? What happened?
Yeah, I tweeted out something that had a lot of controversy in it. I think a lot of it was my framing of what I said.
It was your
Here's the
tone.
deal.
It was your tone, man.
It's not my tone. I think if Neil's probably going to listen to this, and Neil knows that I'm pretty level headed. Like it's
Yeah.
just as a person. I do have disagreements with him, and I do say things that
Yeah.
are basically in direct confrontation to the prevailing understanding of the meaning of America, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's divisive stuff, and it's just a very strong and heavy pushback against the milieu of regime evangelicalism, first of all,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also the
Yes.
overall post-war consensus. And that's the purpose of regime evangelicalism, is to basically just be a catalyst from the regime narratives down to the pews. That's the function, that's the role that they play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the pews are jumping back, and that's going to get into the topic a little bit. Just the ideas of the pews pushing back against the bigwigs at the top of the big Eva and the elite, because we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be woke, and one of the aspects of his definition is the role of victimology. And one of the things that I'm going to argue is that populism as a tactic has a very long and noble history in America. That was the entire structure of a key part of the revolution. It was a key aspect to Jacksonianism. It was a key aspect to the revolt against the New Deal coalition.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these people thought of themselves as on the receiving end of a very bad, dangerous policy that catered to the elite interests and not the will of the everyday American. So so the idea that that's somehow unique or woke or whatever, I think is sort of preposterous. I think America, of all Western countries, has a very strong understanding of the decentralized interests of the American people. So we can get into that in more detail, but the context of it is basically, I'm trying to grapple with the meaning of America, and I'm trying to grapple with the idea that Americans are a people that have a specific historical backdrop. They have a historic experience that they can gather around. And I'm willing to answer this question that Sam Huntington asks: who are we? And we're allowed to make distinction between us as Americans and the world without knocking my computer over. So anyways, you can go ahead and read the article, and we can get into it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a longer article. And so this might be a long episode. Hopefully you have enough time for us today, CJ. I know you're really busy. But and even just before we begin, like piggybacking on a point you made just there is we kind of saw this demonstrated this week in the Southern Baptist Convention had their annual meeting, and especially the last 2 years we had William Wolf on several months ago and to talk about it in advance. But that's the thing that is happening. There's pushback from the pews to the regime evangelicals, right? That's what happened there. That's what was going on, right? They had a large event the same day that the ERLC, the very well funded ERLC, which is just like the SBC's regime evangelical outfit,
Hmm.
they brought in the traitor Mike Pence to come talk. And well, William and guys associated with him, they put on an event where they had Megan Basham speak, who has this book coming out that unveils all the skeletons in the closet of
Hmm.
RLC and things like that. And the same, while the meeting is going on, right, the parts of the manifesto from the Nashville woman who attacked the school
Uh-huh.
uh, were released, and the head of the RLC, it was pivotal in keeping it suppressed. Right, they actually have the copyright on the document. Right, so Pence, he only got like 500 people, and yeah, Forge and Anvil here, he's got the goods. Right, Pence got like 500 people, and Wolf and everybody, they got twice that number at least. And so like there was pushback from regular, normal, heritage American lay people in the SBC against the regime evangelicals from on high that are trying to push all the bad stuff, right? I mean, you saw this in the weeks leading up to it. You had all these people saying, "No, we can't kick out churches that have women pastors in the SBC. What will that do to women? Will be abused. That's terrible." Right? Just absurd, ridiculous stuff. Unfortunately, the law amendment failed, so there's a lot of work to do. But I'm actually very hopeful
Well,
for the
let me
SBC.
just give in some encouragement to those guys. I mean, people like, there's a debate whether the institutions are worth salvaging or whether we need to make our own. I would say both. I mean, some people
Yeah,
are uniquely postured to make it. And if you want to create new institutions, you first have to rally the people within the institutions.
hundred
So
percent.
yeah, they lost they lost the vote, but they still got a majority, and that shows that history is on our side. The momentum is on our side, and
Yeah,
the people, younger people especially, know what time it is, and they're willing to push on things that matter. They're willing to make statements on those issues that are particular to our time and our needs. So keep up the fight, because it's
yeah,
just the very beginning edge of a long train of victories ahead of us.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And so, it takes a lot of work. Like you're not going to reform something as massive as the Southern Baptist Convention right overnight. Right, it's not going to be so easy. Right,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of money. There's a lot of institutional force behind making it really dumb and woke. And so, I want to encourage those. Neither of us are SBC, of course, but we love the guys that there, and it's a major force within American evangelicalism, and we want it to be faithful to God's word. So, without further, unless you have other things to add to that,
No,
we want to get into this
the
this
article.
article, and the title of the article is "What is the woke right?" And in the description here, I called it neologism because it's just this made up word, right? It
A
doesn't really,
neologism? That's
yeah.
hilarious.
This is a made up word,
No, no,
right?
oh, like Neil Shenvi, like a neologism.
Oh, a neologism. Ah, that's great. Oh man, CJay's hilarious.
All right, Neil.
Any
Neil can have it if he wants.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Uh, the term woke right is increasingly used by evangelicals who are broadly critical of Christian nationalism. Like who? Like him? Him and Cody Libolt? Who is increasingly using that? Anyway, uh, whatever. But what is the woke right? Right? What is the woke right? Is it just a pejorative? Or does it accurately describe a movement with a particular set of beliefs? In this article, I'll discuss 1, the origins of the term, 2, the question of whether a discernible woke right exists, and 3, some of the legitimate topics raised by the woke right. Finally, I'll close by enumerating the serious problems with the woke right. My claim is that Christians should reject the ideology of the woke right for precisely the same reasons that we reject the ideology of the woke left. Right? What's he doing here? Right, from the very beginning, right? For the very, oh, we got bad guys to the left, we got bad guys to the right, and here I am, right in the middle, right in the happy middle with the good people. Right, that's
Yeah.
it's
So
just classic like rhetorical move, right? You want to say, oh, there's bad people on both sides, and I'm a good guy in the middle, right? It is nonsense, of course. So, number one, where did the phrase come from? The phrase woke right has been around for several years. In a 2022 interview, U.S. Representative Dan Crenshaw criticized the woke right, which he described as mostly an online phenomenon. According to Crenshaw, people on the woke right portray themselves as victims, immediately label anyone who disagrees with them as establishment or globalist, and resemble the far left more than anything. Right? This is great that it comes from Dan Crenshaw. Dan
Yeah.
Crenshaw. Dan Crenshaw. No, that guy's terrible. He's so awful. Of course, he comes up with something like Neil and him are buddies.
Well, the the thing of it is, what these people are like struggling with is that what they're actually seeing is not this new woke right that came out of nowhere, but what they're actually seeing is, for the first time in a century, an actual right. Like, they've never experienced a right before. So when they see a right wing, they have to call it something super scary because they don't know what they're dealing with, because they've always been in the center. They've always been acolytes of the post-war consensus. That's what they are. They represent it. They stand for it, and they are afraid of its that it's crowding into their territory. It's crowding into their space. That's what they're afraid of. So I think the woke, what they mean by the woke right is just the right, because the conservative movement spent the last 60 years purging anybody on the right. It became a regime-friendly institution that sought they sought with all its energy and all the capital and all its resources to get a seat at the liberal dinner table. That's what they wanted. So, and now all of a sudden, the people who've been pushed aside have been vindicated. And so now people are taking up the mantle, and then now the center is like all surprised. They're like, what is this woke right? It's this new creation. It's this new right version of the radical left. It's like, no, this right. I mean, look at someone like, I'll think of his name in a minute, but, look at the entire editor and history of Chronicles magazine. I mean, they've been talking about this for a very long time. This has been, this is the right wing of history, is what's you're seeing here. It is not this new phenomenon.
No, I agree. Just Crenshaw in particular. Like, look at what this guy is, right? He'll vote for every single possible war that he could ever think of, right? Number one, and he exists to push the globalist American empire, right? That's his job in Congress. So of course he's going to say, "Oh, people to my right, they're bad. They're just as bad as the people burning down cities." Right? It's nuts. Like, the reason why is he's finally, guys like him or Mitch McConnell or whoever else, John McCain, all of them, they're finally feeling pressure from their right, which they haven't forever.
Right.
Correct. That's why they're reacting to it. And so it's fascinating that Neil gloms onto this from Crenshaw.
I mean, look at someone like Bill Kaufman, right? So Bill Kaufman is like a typical populist, old style conservative, right? He cares basically about flyover America. He cares about heritage America. He was part of that just unapproved conservatism that was basically very loud in opposing. I mean, Pat Buchanan was right there with Ron Paul. They were very loud in opposing the exporting of so-called American values like democracy and equality and women's rights and gay rights and all these things around the world. And they were dismissed as what? Far-right extremists. They had a constitutional mentality that limited the federal government from pushing these things. I mean, this has always been part of the popular American ethos, to oppose liberal interventionism and to oppose, the liberal imperialism. But all these guys are just standard everyday constitutional conservatives. None of this is new, but what's new is the particular threats of the left. And one of the features of the right wing in history is that it always has to counter the left to the same proportions that the left threatens America. And so our right wing today is much more confrontational, and it's much, it requires much more even grotesque policies, because the State of the Union is so much more degenerated and the left is so much more powerful. The right has to have a corresponding apparatus of political forcefulness against that left. So that's what's happening. Is the right is always a mirror image of the left. So if the left is extremely prevalent in society, the right has to be to the same extent correspondingly vicious in its attack of the left. So none of us wanted the right wing to have to be here. Like if we
No.
had listened to the Chronicles editors in the 90s, if we had listened to Joe Sobran and the other
Yeah.
dissenters in the 80s, we wouldn't have to be having these very difficult discussions.
100%. So let's keep going. He says more recently, secular cultural commentators like Konstantin Kisen, I don't know how to pronounce it, it doesn't matter, have likewise criticized the woke right for its knee-jerk contrarianism and have argued that the dissident right is going woke. However, the use of the phrase woke right in evangelical circles seems to have begun in November 2022 with Kevin DeYoung's review of Stephen Wolfe's book, The Case for Christian Nationalism. And if you remember, you weren't here for that episode, CJ, but when Ligon Duncan was interviewed by that whatever his name was, that one guy, he mentioned that they basically like workshopped Kevin DeYoung's article together, right? All these bigwigs. So he kind of pulled back the veil a little bit, saying like, "Oh yeah, I read it and gave Kevin some pointers and stuff like that." Like, this is a group project that all of these the regime evangelicals in this case in the PCA got together and said, "All right, we're gonna have Kevin DeYoung fight back." Right, or maybe it was the Moscow Mood one, but whatever it was, right? This is what they do, right? These are all approved in this tight knit group at the very top. All right, so Kevin DeYoung uses that in November 2022 with his review of Stephen's book. His article was entitled "The Rise of Right Wing Wokeism," and I'll quote 3 relevant paragraphs in full. Besides trafficking and sweeping and unsubstantiated claims about the totalizing control of the globalist American empire and gynocracy, number 1, sweeping and unsubstantiated claims. Like, how do you not see it, Kevin DeYoung? How do you not see it everywhere? That the globalist American empire is dominating everything. Right? How do you not see that, man? Like, right now, this month of June, right? If you drive your truck and accidentally you have to slam on the brakes to not hit a child in the crosswalk in Spokane, Washington, you will go to prison for desecrating the holy gay flag painted on the road. Right? No, that's not. No, it's the globalist American regime. That doesn't exist. Gynocracy? What? Please report to HR, Stephen Wolfe. Right, Wolfe's apocalyptic vision, for all its vitriol toward the secular elites, borrows liberally from the playbook of the left. He not only
So okay, here's who wrote the playbook of the left that Stephen quotes: John Calvin, Samuel Rutherford, Richard Hooker, Martin Luther, Francis Turretin. This is the playbook of the left. What do you think?
Yeah. Or even the modern left, right? Who wrote their playbook? Carl Schmitt, right? Wrote the playbook of the left, right?
Okay, that's true too. Yeah.
So like, which is it, man? But yeah, the whole book is quotes of the reform. He's doing ressourcement, right? That's what he's doing. Wolfe's apocalyptic vision, for all his vitriol toward the secular elites, borrows liberally from the playbook of the left. He not only redefines the nature of oppression as psychological oppression, making it easier to justify extreme measures and harder to argue things aren't as bad as they seem. Well, yeah, man. Like, how do you not see that? Right? How do you not see that we're in this panopticon? They're watching everything we do. You can't say or do anything that's wrong, right? You every part of your life is under this grinding longhouse, right? Everybody knows this, right? Everybody feels it all day long. If you go to a job, right, you're constantly over your shoulders, HR watching you. If you click the like on the wrong thing online, right? Come on. But yeah, what he's saying though, right, DeYoung here, is extreme measures. Extreme measures like what? Like the government protecting children from getting transed. Like what extreme measures is he talking about? Right, deporting tens of millions of illegal immigrants, is that an extreme measure? I don't know. Right, so DeYoung again. He rallies the troops figuratively, but also literally, by reminding them that they're victims. Yeah. You're victims. The world is out to get you, and people out there hate you. They do. They do hate you. What's DeYoung saying here? No, they don't hate you, man. They don't hate you.
Yeah.
They love you,
It's,
actually.
I don't.
Come on.
So has Kevin DeYoung? I would be curious to get his read on Jeremy Carl's new book.
Yeah.
That every industry, that every aspect of American hierarchy, the institutions, the financial conglomerations, the academy, the entertainment, all these, the church, the big churches, all these things are very catered toward appealing to the left-wing revolution. They are explicitly anti-white. I don't think that should be up for debate anymore after Jeremy's book. I haven't seen anyone challenge his very in-depth and detailed look at the statistics. And I mean, even Chris Rufo's book, the actual policies that these bureaucracies are operating on, the idea that they don't hate us is the new conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's so absurd, man. Like, I mean, this is 2 years ago that he wrote this review, but like just reading this 2 years later, it's like, are you nuts? How do you how can you argue against this, right? Right. The world is out to get you, and people out there hate you. Fact check, true. Is not a message that will ultimately help white men or any other group that considers themselves oppressed. Why would you say that? Why would you think that? Right? If the entire world is telling is a doing things to actively destroy your way of life and actively shutting you out of the market, actively shutting you out of college and all the mechanisms by which you can have success in your life. Right? If you're being cut off from those things and made into a second class citizen in your own country, and the entire world then gaslights you about it, says that's not happening, it's not real, it's not true, right? What's the first thing you should do? Right? What's the first you should say? Actually, it's happening, and you should push back against it. Right?
Hey,
You should
Andrew,
identify it. Yeah.
Have you ever read Murray Rothbard's essay on right-wing populism?
Oh, years, maybe a decade ago.
Can I read a paragraph of it?
Of
I have it up.
Do
Okay.
it.
Murray Rothbard versus Kevin DeYoung. Ready?
Let's go.
The basic right-wing populist insight is that we live in a statist country and a statist world dominated by a ruling elite consisting of a coalition of big government, big business, and various influential special interest groups. More specifically, the old America of individual liberty, private property, and minimal government has been replaced by a coalition of politicians and bureaucrats allied with and even dominated by powerful corporate and old money financial elites. The new class of technocrats and intellectuals, including Ivy League academics and media elites, who constitute the opinion molding class in society. In short, we are ruled by an updated 20th century coalition of throne and altar, except this throne is various big business groups, and the altar is a secular statist intellectuals mixed with the secularists is a judicious infusion of social gospel and mainstream Christians. So even back in the early 90s, the libertarians were talking in terms of the crony capitalist elite that you had united with the managerial state and all of us everyday Americans. The idea that the woke right is this some new 2020 phenomenon led by Stephen Wolf is loony, ludicrous. They don't take into account. I mean, even Wilmore Kendall, right, the guy who wrote the basic symbols of American, politics or whatever, his entire definition of the American ethos was on the popular mind. This is Jacksonianism. The idea that the populace is at war with the elites has a 200-year history. The history of America is in our favor, not Kevin DeYoung's.
Yeah, I want to respond to this comment. This was already here in the early 90s already. What are we supposed to return to then? Well, a time before the 90s. Right. But like Kevin DeYoung, like
they have no idea.
Not a clue.
They have no idea. This has been talked about for so long. The idea that there is an elite and it's completely at odds with it basically initiated a coup against the Constitution. All these people like Neil Shenvi and Kevin DeYoung and all these people, they get mad at us for challenging the continued relevance of the Constitution. The Constitution has been dead in the water since the New Deal. I mean, this is a very standard. This isn't extremist or right wing at all. The left thinks that this. I mean, everybody across the board, the liberals in the 70s and 80s were talking about the fact that the Constitution needed to be adopted to new situations because it's no longer relevant.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is not new.
No, no, not at all. Let's continue on the next paragraph here.
Sorry.
No. This you're absolutely right, and it's important commentary. When Wolf sarcastically thanks those who woke many from their dogmatic slumber, and rejoices that more are awakening each day, one might be forgiven for seeing his version of Christian nationalism as a form of right wing wokeism. What does it mean to be woke, if not that we're awakened to the reality that oppression is everywhere, extreme measures are necessary, and the regime must be overthrown? Right? What is it? What you're awakened? You're
Yeah.
awakened to it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't even know what I don't even know what really to say to that. Like
Yeah.
that's one of those cheap what's it called? Like that's a Happy Meal gotcha. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you reach to the bottom of the bag and you got this sick burn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what to
Yeah.
say to it.
It's absurd. And like, here's the thing. Uh you could stay asleep, Kevin DeYoung. We don't we when you wake up, it'll be too late. Right. That's all I gotta say for him. Right. The last thing he has here is, if critical race theory teaches that America has failed, that the existing order is irredeemable, that Western liberalism was a mistake from the beginning, and that the current system is rigged against our tribe, and that we ought to make ethnic consciousness more important. It seems to me that Wolf's project is the right wing version of these same impulses. Right. Here's what I have to say to that is, um the current order, right? The post-war order, it is irredeemable, right? There is no fixing it, right? It's this transitory state between old America and post America. I mean, you had a tweet about that today,
Right.
right? That's what we're like. There is no going back to that and having a happy 1990s where things are good and friendly and wonderful, right? That there's no going back to that. That world too is dead. There's no going back to that whatsoever.
Yeah,
And
this is the need for political realism.
yeah,
It can't just operate on like bumper stickers. Like, what are the
yeah,
real dynamics? What is really? I mean, people like actual scholars that are into this stuff, like Christopher Caldwell
hmm,
and Jeremy Carl. I mean, they're looking at the actual mechanisms that are basically coming to fruition. These are things that have
hmm,
long been structured, and we can't just look at the band-aids that have been placed on the system and apply more bandages like that. That's not how politics
yeah,
function. You have to look at systems. But here's the problem: anytime you look at systems, you're engaging in what they call critical theory, because we're looking beyond just the bumper stickers. So that's why
yeah.
it's controversial or whatever. So we can
Well,
keep going with the article.
yeah, and I mean, I think DeYoung, the problem with him is, like, he has not thought deeply about these things, right? That's it's evident from his commentary. He has not thought deeply about the function of the ruling regime, what it does, the managerial state. Like, those ideas are not even on his radar at all.
Right.
And so,
Right.
how how else is he going to react but this? Right? It's kind of sad. Like, and this is one of the leading lights in conservative Presbyterianism in America,
And
and
real
it
quick,
doesn't get it.
I mean, I have my frustrations with Kevin DeYoung, but he's not the most ridiculous of Wolf's critics. He has
No,
written fairly on trying to understand Wolf. And I think part of the
yeah,
problem too is these guys are not trained in political history. That's part of the
no,
problem.
yeah, that's just it. Like, I don't view DeYoung as this, like, overtly malicious character. I'll be
Right.
clear about that.
And there are
Uh,
some of those. Yeah.
there absolutely are. I don't think he's one of those. I think he's just aloof, like actively
Mhm.
aloof to reality, and just is not going to get it. Like, he's in a very comfortable part of the world, where you can be insulated from these things very easily, right? I don't know exactly where he lives, but I imagine he lives in a very nice suburb. His kids go to a very nice Christian school, and he's insulated from the realities that pretty much everybody else sees. And so
Mhm.
he isn't going to get it, right? He's
It's
not going to get it until he's forced to.
it's harder for those people to get it.
Yeah.
There are some people like that do get it. I mean, I would almost characterize someone like Aaron Wrenn this way, but he gets it a little bit more, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. So we got to keep going. Otherwise, this is going to be a 4-hour podcast. Um, so another important use of the phrase woke right came from Doug Wilson in an interview with Sean DeMars. That's the guy's name that interviewed Lincoln Doug.
Mhm.
Sean DeMars and Joe Rigney. Here's the relevant portion of that interview. DeMars: do you believe in the woke right? Rigney: like, basically the equivalent of the woke left, but the dissident right guys? Wilson: This is something I'm actually concerned about, quite concerned about. Identity politics on the right. These are people who have been taunted their entire lives, adult lives, for being white. And finally, they say, I might as well be proud of it. I'm going to be white and proud and start hating Jews. This is a big concern of mine on the anti-Semitism, which is starting to manifest itself on the right. I've been fighting that tooth and nail. And a lot of people on the right have responded with, okay, boomer. This excerpt is particularly relevant because Wilson is one of the few major evangelical theologians who is generally supportive of Christian nationalism. For example, he published the Wolf book that was the subject of DeYoung's review. Finally, in 2020, I descriptively, not pejoratively, defined left-wing wokeness as follows. 1. Society is divided into oppressor-oppressed groups along the lines of race, class, gender, sexuality, etc. Via 2, hegemonic power. But privileged people are blind. So 3, we need to defer to the lived experience of the marginalized. And 4, dismantle unjust systems. Right. So that's his definition of the woke left, and I think that's generally accurate. Right? Would you quibble with that at all?
No, I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's right about that. A few months ago, I argued that the ideology of the dissident right could be defined in precisely analogous terms. 1, society is divided into straight white men and their enemies via 2, hegemonic norms, the Longhouse post-war consensus, Judeo-Christianity, but normies are blind. So we need to red pill them. 2, 4, retake the West. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about like the development of the managerial state in the 20th century is that everybody used to admit that there was a dynamic between the elite who were at the top, who were the managers, right? This is James Burnham. So this is very National Review. This is pretty normy, that there were an elite that managed society, and they claimed that they had the right, because of their education, their expertise, their intelligence, to basically run society into a greater future, right? So this was kind of how society has always been structured. What people on the right recognized was that we should accept that basic dynamic. We shouldn't pretend as if we lived in some open society. All the claims about our system taken up by like ideological liberals. It was all fake. Yeah. Right. So that's what the right wing, that's what conservatism basically contributed to the problem. So this long precedes our post-Obama.
Yes.
Like post-Obama, the content that filled the framework. The framework's been there for over 100 years. Yeah. But when the New Deal came into effect, it wasn't anti-white. So what's happening, I think, is that there is sort of a lone bulwark. There is sort of a group of holdouts in America that are not interested in where the elite want to take things. And so therefore they have to be agitated. They have to be pushed specifically. And so this whole idea of society taking the form of this dynamic, I think, is new, but it's not essential to the dynamics between the elite and the population. I think it's a very new phenomenon. So when we describe society as divided into straight white men and their enemies, this is a very last 10, 15 years dynamic. I think the fruits were there before, for sure, even back to the civil rights movement.
Well, it comes into full bloom, right?
It comes into full bloom, for sure.
They're able to finally take hegemony over the system.
Right. Society is not necessarily structured in that way, whereas the left would say society is necessarily structured with the oppressed oppressor. I think what the right is picking up on is it just happens that this is the mechanism they're choosing for their revolution.
Yeah, I think in the abstract, what he's saying is more or less correct, but it's not universal like it is for the left, right? This is a particular situation, and so Tim gave us this question and gave us a little bit of moolah. So you want to answer this one, like Kissen, Kaisen, and Shenvi? Why are they scared of group identity? Things like this in their own country. So even like taking it to look at Great Britain, for example, like I tweeted about it today. There was this guy running for parliament in Great Britain. Apparently, I don't know where he's from, somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa. And he says something like he loves white tears or something, like he loves to drink white tears, right? And he's running for parliament in Great Britain. Like, one, why is a guy like that allowed in Great Britain to begin with, much less run for political office? right? That hates the native population of the country that has allowed him and his family to be there, right? Why is this why do they put up with that? And so you think about Great Britain, what is wrong about British people, Britons, you know, advocating for themselves as a people and saying we want Britain for the British only, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do guys like Shenvi or Constantine Kissin or all of these characters, right? Why are they terrified of this?
Yeah. there's okay, so there's a number of different answers. I think the one, I don't want to get into personal stuff, but
No,
I
I don't
do.
think we need to. I don't think
No,
we need to go
okay,
down
I
there.
don't know if he's, so here's my answer. My answer is that liberalism needs an enemy.
Yeah,
And if liberalism is going to sustain itself, it has to oppose the enemy. I mean, this
yeah,
is one of the great contributions of Carl Schmitt, that no matter how hard a system pretends like it can move beyond this friend enemy distinction, eventually it's going to come up.
yeah,
And for
yeah,
liberalism to maintain its hegemony in the world, it has to respond to enemies real or imagined. That's just
yeah,
a part of its ethos. This is why, like, the post-war or the the World War II myth is like the founding myth of modern America. It needs it needs fascism and communism and all these things to justify its own existence in the world.
yeah,
So I think these things are derivatives of that central animating aspect to America as a liberal superpower.
yeah. I think you're right. I mean, even you can look at it in like a Girardian framework. We just hung
Mm-hmm.
out with in Ogden and got to meet the aforementioned Joe Rigney and talk a little bit about Girard. And liberalism needs that. It needs a scapegoat, right? It needs like this is what animates all non-Christian societies is the scapegoat mechanism, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to have a bad guy in order for all the. I mean, we even talked about this when we talked with Steve Saylor, right? The coalition of the fringes. How does it hold together? It holds together by hating one particular group, right? That's how they keep themselves together,
Yeah.
right? That's how, like, even a couple of years ago, there was this huge push to stop Asian hate, right? Stop Asian hate. Why we got to stop Asian hate, right? In order to keep the Asians inside the coalition of the fringes, because they
Yeah.
wanted everyone to imagine that random like white rednecks were driving around in their trucks and throwing eggs at yellow people, right?
Mhm.
When the reality is like all of the attacks and like if you dig into it a little bit, like who are like all of these Asian people are getting mugged and killed in cities, and it wasn't white people doing it, right? And so it kind of died off when people started
Yeah.
asking that question:
Yeah.
who is
Exactly.
doing the Asian hate exactly? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the thing. It needs white people to be the enemy, right? That's what animates the whole thing. It needs white, straight white Christian men, right? Everything that's the opposite, right? Everything that represents this hierarchy, um, they need to attack and destroy it, right? In order
Yeah.
to keep their group together.
Well,
And
what
and yeah, so anyway, go ahead.
So one of the things that Amy Wax, she's at the I think she's at Pennsylvania Law School or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, she
or
she
UPenn.
she constantly gets in trouble, but she's done very good job at tracing the history of our ideological framing of some of these problems and
Mm-hmm.
talking about the fact that people don't talk about this anymore, but like the 70s and 80s, especially in the European left, was very much about revenge. That was the kind of the
Mm-hmm.
purpose of immigration, and this is what motivated like Camp of the Saints and stuff. Was there's this like mentality of this academic institutionalized mentality of we're going to get the Europeans back for colonialism. So
Oh, the horrible
no,
Europeans. Yeah,
like seriously.
yeah,
So
oh yeah,
it always was this. This is what animated the left after communism failed, right? After the
yeah,
economic interpretation of society failed, the new left, the post '60s left, really adopted this instinct of opposing European culture and racial elements and ethnic backgrounds and all of this stuff. This has all been imported to America, and it's combined itself with the managerial momentum in earlier
mm-hmm.
decades. So
Mm-hmm.
she's done a really good, and I would look into Amy Wax's work on this because she really describes the fact that the post-war left animates itself by its anti-European sentiments.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, let's keep going here. Otherwise, we'll belabor that point too much. So these characterizations, independently offered by DeYoung, Wilson, and myself, are strikingly similar. Okay, well, they identified that there is a reanimated right wing in America. Good job, guys. Good job. 2, problems with the label woke right. Critics of the term woke right can offer several objections to the label itself. First, they could argue that it's solely pejorative, since most evangelicals rightly reject wokeness. The term woke right can cast nothing more than can be cast as nothing more than a lazy slur to scare Christians away from unorthodox political opinions. Correct. Yeah, that's clearly the point of it. Second, they could argue that wokeness is fundamentally a left-wing phenomenon. Also correct. Therefore, by definition, there could be no such thing as the woke right. Yes. Finally, they could argue that the woke right is a nebulous collection of groups with very different commitments and worldviews. It includes evangelicals, Catholic integralists, neo-pagans, and Nietzschean vitalists. In other words, it doesn't characterize a single ideology. Yeah, all of these are correct. So this is how Shenby responds to these objections. My response would be as follows. First, while woke right certainly can be used as a lazy slur, it doesn't have to be. In the same way, I've always used the term woke descriptively to refer to a particular set of ideas. Second, what the problem with that is these ideas are not the same, right? They have a same form, but the ideas of wokeness is it's a universal phenomenon, right? There is always the oppressor and oppressed. There's always these hegemonic structures oppressing, gay people and black people and women. And whereas on the right, it's a reaction to the ascendancy of wokeness to power, right? Those are two different things. So anyway, secondly, if the term woke refers to a particular set of ideas, then insofar as these ideas have been adopted by some on the right, it seems perfectly reasonable to talk about the woke right. Yeah, I guess so, man. Whatever. Finally, and ironically, I faced the exact same objections when I talked about the woke left. I was accused of using a lazy slur. I was told that I was unfairly labeling people as woke simply for talking about justice. I was told that wokeness was being promoted by evangelicals, Catholics, progressive activists, and neo-atheists, and therefore it didn't characterize a single ideology. But those claims were and are incorrect, right? He's right. They were incorrect. It turns out that wokeness is a real ideology that is exhibited by people with a variety of different worldviews, although wokeness does tend in the end to cannibalize those views. For these reasons, I do think the term woke right is reasonable, provided the ideas of the woke right are sufficiently similar to those of the woke left. But are they? To answer that question, I like to turn to some prominent examples of right-wing wokeness from the last few years. The first comes from Stephen Wolf's co-host on the Ars Political podcast in 2021. He published an article under a pseudonym and a website, Identity Dixie, and it commends an approach he calls white anti-fragility. He urges that white people need to explicitly embrace the ideas promoted by critical race educator Robin DiAngelo in her book, White Fragility. He writes, when white anti-fragility is confronted with critical race theory, it wouldn't merely not cry or break down, nor would it merely maintain composure. Rather, it would use CRT's own premises as resources for growth. For instance, CRT teaches that whites are guilty of their white ancestors' sins. White anti-fragility using the counter dilemma neither concedes the point nor argues against it. Rather, it deduces another positive conclusion from the same premises. If your white skin and genes confer all the guilt of your ancestors, then they also confer the pride of your ancestors as well, their accomplishments, victories, virtues, rights, liberties, freedoms, heritages, land, and more. Further, if skin and genes confer guilt, then this implies that race and blood, kinship and ethnicity bind people together in real social national ways that cannot be broken by time or circumstance. CRT, by accusing whites of racial guilt, reinforces and strengthens ethnic bonds between our ancestors, ourselves, and our posterity. All right, what do you think about that quote, CJ?
Yeah. So
using wokeness against itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, tactically, it's brilliant, first of all. But secondly, I think that what Neil's struggling with is that there is an illiberalism to us. Like, liberalism is not the historic norm. People have for thousands of years, even for the first 250 years, 200 years of American history, they have thought in terms of us and others. There is an American identity. That's the thing that they're struggling with, is there is the ability to look at systems and recognize that we don't live in an open society. And that's what they're struggling with. That liberalism came about like in the way that the regime evangelicals and the regime itself, the post-war consensus, think of liberalism. That's a 20th century invention. People
Yes.
didn't always think of themselves like this. We do have
Yeah.
the founders could speak about them and their posterity. John Jay could speak about the American founders as inheriting the customs and norms and mores of their European ancestors. There was the ability to frame group meaning in these terms. 20th
Hmm.
century liberalism is something very unique and innovative. It's not the historic norm. And in what Neil's struggling with is the fact that people are recovering the illiberal roots of our own political system.
Yeah. Yeah. And even this, like these quotes that he digs up, right? It is, yeah, well, it's fundamentally illiberal, but it's also just like a rhetorical device of like frame control, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
it's tactical.
okay, oh, okay, right, assuming the center, right? Okay, my ancestors did bad things, they also did good things too, and by definition, right, if you're arguing that everything bad they did counts toward me, then everything good they did counts toward me as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Yeah, I guess that's very scary to someone like Neil. Um, but anyway, in the he quotes a little bit more from this article. Feminists and other deconstructionists have done another great service to us, whites, by digging up and republishing the buried writings of our white European ancestors. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Resourcement,
you see
resourcement
that
is a
in
right wing project.
Resourcement. Yeah, you see this.
Resourcement is a right wing project.
Yeah, yeah, you see it. It's like, oh, look at how these misogynistic, bigoted reformers. Right? Okay.
You forgot to attach the Giga Chad.
That's right. He continues. They do this in order to expose, critique, and deconstruct the evils of our past, patriarchy, nationalism, racialism, and the like. But white anti-fragility observes that these babblers and zealots are merely digging up the gems of our ancestors for us and placing them on platters before our eyes. He concludes the article by saying, when we become racially anti-fragile, we are free to take our opponent's weapons and grow stronger by them. We're no longer afraid of the accusations and rhetoric used against us. We take what they mean for evil and use it for good. We plunder the pagan Egyptians. I can't fathom reading this article and not recognizing it as the perfect mirror image of left-wing wokeness.
Yeah. Okay. The way Philip Derrida says this all the time, I think this is brilliant. I think this is brilliant. The liberal has a complete inability to differentiate between the counter-revolution and the revolution.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
what's going on here. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. The author wants whites to affirm the premises of CRT, but merely wants them to draw a different conclusion, one that strengthens whites' racial identity and makes them proud of it rather than ashamed of it. Right. And I would shift from like, white identity, which, I don't think, you're interested in, or I'm interested in as a concept solely in that way, but rather like American identity. Like you look at like the 1619 Project, right? This other CRT thing where they're digging up all the bad stuff about Jamestown and colonial America and how horrible it was. And you just reframe it. It's like, yeah, let's actually analyze colonial America and think about colonial America a little bit more. If all the bad stuff we're guilty of, I'm gonna say that's mine. All the good stuff is mine too, right? So bringing civilization to the new world, right? That's ours, right? We get to claim that. Having Christian nations on American soil, yep, that's ours too. We'll take it, right? That like restoring American identity, right? American like heritage, American identity. That's good. And so what's Neil freaking out about here? Right.
Well, that's why I tweeted a couple of weeks ago that like I don't debate the meaning of America with those that want to liquidate it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what Stephen's doing here.
Exactly.
Like I'll debate the meaning of America with other heritage Americans because we do have disagreements. I love the debates between like the Abraham Lincolnites in the South, like the Southerners. That's all interesting to me. But I'm not going to debate the meaning of America with those that seek its destruction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't get a seat at that table.
Yeah.
So next, let me offer a few quotes from Wolf's book, The Case for Christian Nationalism, all of which were highlighted by DeYoung. Quote, every step of progress is overcoming you. Ask yourself, what sort of villain does each event of progress have in common? The straight white male. That is the chief outgroup of New America, the embodiment of regression and oppression. Yeah, that's what they believe. Period. Correct.
Yeah. What do you think? Like, look, this is Chris Rufo. This is an extremist.
No.
He's
I know.
publishing their actual handbooks.
Neil probably thinks Chris Rufo is an extremist. Next quote: "We live under a gynocracy, a rule by women. This may not be apparent on the surface, since men still run many things, but the governing virtues of America are feminine vices, associated with certain feminine virtues such as empathy, fairness, and equality." Right? Just listen to Joe. We brought him up a few times, like Joe Reading on empathy. Right? He's great on this stuff. Like, he gets it. He has their number on that particular issue of empathy, and that's everywhere. Right? You see it. Be a good human. Be a good human. Have a normal one. Right? That is this longhouse that suffocates everything. Next quote. These are all bangers, by the way. These are all great. There's no robust common ground here. There's no credibility we can establish with them. Unavoidably, we are threats to their regime. Christian nationalism is an existential threat to the secularist regime. They're enemies of the church, and as such, enemies of the human race.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Yep. Correct. Next one. If you are a white, heterosexual, cisgendered male, then the world will not offer you any favors. Correct. I mean, maybe Neil hasn't experienced this, I guess. But it's true, right? You are at the bottom of the totem pole if you are a straight, white, Christian male. Period. You are. That's reality. Indeed, your career advancement depends on sacrificing your self-respect by praising and pandering to your inferiors who rule over you. Yes. Yeah. You gotta play nice with the regime if you want to succeed. This is why people do it. I just don't know how you can't see it at this point. Here we see straight white men positioned as a victim group in a society dominated by hegemonic narratives like gynocracy. Straight white men need to wake up to this reality and fight back. Yes, they do. Lest there be any uncertainty that Wolf embraces a critical analysis of society, as said so explicitly in his tweets. For example, he wrote, "Anti-woke Christians, in the rejection of power hierarchies and privilege, have rendered themselves incapable of seeing the absurd but real privileges and power hierarchy at work in our world. This is why I will not reject a critical approach to social phenomena. They are subtle hierarchies of power, some natural and proper, and others artificial and absurd." Right? That's correct. Like, one thing that if you get out of it, like, the woke are more correct than the mainstream. Right? That's Kofi Annan. That's his phrase that he uses, his catchphrase.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 100% correct. Like, they get that power is a real thing. Hierarchies are a real thing. Hegemony is a real thing. It's not just some made up thing. It's the issue with the woke is that they have everything exactly backwards, right? They think that things that are wrong, that right, homosexuality being this socially destructive thing because of the way God ordered the world, is because of power. Right? Power is what makes gay people get sick and die, or whatever. Right? It's power that does it. It's Dr. Fauci killing all the gay people in the 1980s. Right? That's what did it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why that's what the poor oppressed people. Right? Rather than right, there's an order to the world that God has made. There's a hierarchy to the world that God has made, and it's generally good. But in our day, all of it is inverted. All of it is messed up. All of the worst people rise to the top. Right? That's the problem. Right? So Wolf is right in identifying it this way, that yes, there is power. And we should take a critical approach.
So I think those of us on the right are way more capable of speaking about these things because we are drenched in the work of James Burnham, for instance, and Paul Gottfried, and I mean, I'm not allowed to say his name, but Sam Francis. But like these people have detailed it, and it's not even just them, but like this is libertarianism. Like
this is Rothbard.
This is Murray Rothbard. It's not even Murray Rothbard. It's Albert J. Nock and H.L. Mencken and Garrett Garrett and like all the 1950s. Like this is the Southern agrarians. They talked about all this stuff too. This is Russell Kirk. Russell Kirk got into this stuff a little bit in the 70s and 80s. This is Pat Buchanan. I mean, this is very standard stuff. What
Oh,
it's
these are
not,
all bad radical guys, I guess. We can't listen to them.
it's true, but what it's not is it's not National Review and it's not Fox
Yeah.
News,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
not Neil Cavuto.
Yeah,
So
it's not
that's
it's
what,
not the approved opinions. You're not allowed to have these opinions. You're not allowed to think of the world in this way. All right, just turn on Fox News and they'll tell you what's up.
yeah.
They'll tell you more about Hunter Biden, I guess. Two, our social world runs on subtle power relations. Yeah. The problem with the left is that they call them all arbitrary and unjust based on an egalitarian principle, which the anti-woke largely share. Yeah, this is this is just basic stuff.
This is basic stuff.
It's like, oh, I'm so scary. Oh no, oh no, I'm gonna die. There's subtle power relations. How could they
But,
say this?
you
Everything's
know,
just random.
if you want to learn more about power relations and subtle power relations, if you want to learn more about hierarchies and stuff, you know what you should read? Read the Federalist Papers.
Yeah.
This is
Yes. Yes.
actually
Yeah.
the founders were incredibly prescient on
Yeah.
this topic. In fact,
Yeah.
actually, if you're listening to this, Neil, go read the Federalist Papers and tell me it does not understand the world in terms of subtle power
Yeah.
relations.
Get the highlighter out. Right. Highlight it like you're in fifth grade, please. Every single one of them. And many of them were anonymous too, by the way.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing.
So read this book written by a bunch of anons, and take out
Yeah,
your highlighter. Um,
it's so funny.
he has these screenshotted because maybe Wolf deleted them. I don't know. Anti-woke Christians and the rejection of power hierarchies and privilege have rendered themselves incapable of seeing the world as the absurd but real privileges and power hierarchy in a world. Right. Oh, this is the one he already shared. Okay. Third example. This is the best one, by the way. I don't know if you have the article open. Third
I do.
example from the book, The Boniface Option by Andrew Isker. That's me. Hey, Neil. Isker is the co-author with Andrew Torba of Christian Nationalism, a biblical guide for taking dominion and discipling the nations. In his preface, Isker writes this. Right. The chat can let us know if what they think of this. You live in a dystopia. Every part of the historical human existence in our world has already been turned on its head. The insane dystopian and totalitarian world we fear the elites might create is the one we already live in. I use the term trash world to describe the dystopian society. And the point of the Boniface option is to make you see it for what it is and begin the hard work of escaping and overcoming it. Correct. If I do say so myself.
Is he providing counters to all this stuff, or is he just using it?
I don't think so. I don't think he is. I think he's like, oh, look at these scary woke right people. Oh my goodness.
I mean, we have like the most deranged, disgusting trash flooding through all of our smartphones and staring at us in the face every day.
All day long.
That's something from a 1970s dystopian cartoon. Like I don't know what the problem with this is.
Yeah, exactly. Like here's another he's posting all the best stuff in the book. People aren't going to buy it.
He forgot to attach the gig chat.
Yeah, people are not going to buy the book now. The Globo Homo cinematic universe that the modern Bugman lives in must be chopped down. All of it is a seamless garment. I don't think I could say this word on YouTube. The T word. Open borders, acceptance and promotion of sodomy and other sexual perversions, feminism, abortion, and antinatalism, anti-white race hate, so-called critical race theory, pornography, and the entire consumerist lifestyle must be sent through a wood chipper. That's page 18. We believe because modern liberal egalitarian society abolished the formal institutions of slavery, that slavery qua slavery has been eradicated. But it very clearly is not. Instead, it is wrapped in a thin veneer of consent. If you were a wicked, evil social engineer and were going to design a massive slave state, the very best conditions would be where the masses believe they were totally free and that their own bondage was their choice.
This is a really good I mean, this is really enlightening, actually. I'm learning a lot here, Neil. But like,
CJay hasn't read the book.
This is great. I should get this guy on my show. But I've talked about this. I mean, I don't want to chase rabbit trails here, but endorsed. This paragraph is endorsed.
Good. All right. Now we get to the meat of it because he's coming after you now. Note the frequent allusions to both the oppressive hegemonic ideologies like liberalism, egalitarianism, and feminism, and to the blindness of normies. Yeah, Neil, right? Do you not think that liberalism, egalitarianism, and feminism have power in our society? Like, are you not denying that? Like, they do, man. Like, how do you get that? They have power, and they're enforcing that power on everybody, right? Everybody to just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I guess I'm going to send my wife to work now and send my daughter to college," right? This has been socially enforced, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
been created for us. It's not spontaneous. Like, do they think this stuff is spontaneous? Right? I guess I just don't get how these people think. His framework is classic neo-Marxism. Oh, I'm a neo-Marxist now, albeit for someone on the right. The proletariat, straight white male normies, are blind and consent to their own oppression due to the hegemonic power of the bourgeoisie. The bugmen overlords of trash world. No, he's getting it wrong. Like the bugmen are the inhabitants of trash world, right? They're the slaves. Um, right? The people behind the managerial regime. That's who's driving things, right? They aren't the bugmen, right?
Fucking overlords.
Right. He's got it wrong. All right. Finally, CJay Angle. He misspelled CJ. So you're going to want to go correct that, Neil, when you watch this. It's capital C, capital J, A, Y. Common mistake. CJay Angle is Andrew Isker's podcast co-host and a frequent advocate for people he calls heritage Americans. Recently defined this term in a long Twitter post. I can't quote it in full. Why not? This is the internet. You have all the space in the world. What do you mean? What do you mean you can't quote it in full? But he wrote, when I say heritage American, this is what I mean. Those who are ethno-culturally tied to the ethos and spirit of the United States prior to its definitional transformation into a propositional nation after World War II. This, therefore, includes the type of people that came here during the Ellis Island generation, even if that was a significant socio-political mistake. Yeah. It includes the blacks of the Old South, like Booker T. Washington, though it repudiates any instinct that some of them have to leverage their experience for the purposes of political guilt in our time. It also includes integrated Native Americans with the same stipulation. It affirms, however, this is the part he got the highlighter out on. It affirms, however, the domination and preeminence of the European-derived peoples, their institutions, and their way of life. Heritage America is centered around the experiences and norms of Anglo-Protestants.
Okay, let me pause you right there. First of all, well written, beautiful language. I love that.
Really good. Yeah, but I endorse this paragraph.
Every time he quotes this, he leaves out the next sentence. It's hilarious. I don't know why he does this. So, okay, I don't know who would disagree with this. That's probably why he leaves it out. But the next sentence that he's always skipped over
I can't quote it in full. We don't have the space. We don't have the space for it.
So, first of all, okay, you know how Stephen Wolfe always talks about Anglo-Protestantism as the core of American? That came from this book. That was from Samuel Huntington. So
read that one, Neil, and get the highlighter out for that one too.
This is where he got that. I mean, because Samuel Huntington went into depth on grappling with the meaning of America. But anyways, the next sentence that he always skips is, so let me just read the bolden part and then I'll keep going with it. He says, so it affirms, Heritage America affirms the domination and preeminence of the European derived peoples. That doesn't mean that we dominated everybody. What it means is like it was they were the it was their interests and the struggles that they were facing that were the dominating factor, right? So their institutions and their way of life. Heritage America is centered around the experiences and norms of Anglo-Protestants. So the next sentence is actually even more definitional. So it was their customs, their instincts, their priorities, their norms, their struggles, their perspectives that set the tone and vision of Heritage America. I don't know how you can disagree. Like, I don't know how anyone can read 18th century history and disagree with the idea that it was their customs and norms and instincts, that like everything was defined in terms of the roadblocks and hurdles that they were facing. I don't know how you can get away with that. And the fact that he leaves that out, like that'd be interesting debate. Like, Neil, if you're listening to this, I'd be interested in debating you on whether it was the Anglo-Protestant struggles and norms that defined the meaning of America and its founding.
Yeah.
Do you want to debate that?
Yeah.
I'd love to debate that.
How could you say it's not? Yeah.
And then I said anything outside of that either assimilated to it or was killed off. So like the Native Americans and their unique way of life, it would basically died off. I mean, so but everything else assimilated or was basically. I think when I said killed off, he thinks I mean they like murdered him or something. That's cool. I don't know, but like no. So I don't know how you can get away with that, but whatever. You can keep going with the reading.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, yeah, that's kind of a shady move to cut that part. Once the ethos of Heritage America was liquidated after World War II, ethos, not ethnos, ethos.
Mhm.
America was subverted and taken over. Right. That also is incontrovertible. Right. That's what happened.
And
Um,
I'm being generous here because a lot of people, like a lot of like even this is the funniest thing. The number one group of people that thought America was over at the New Deal, they was the classical liberals.
yeah.
They were the ones that thought the New Deal was the end and America was taken over then. So I'm being
Yeah.
extremely generous here. I don't know how
By
this is
by
controversial.
placing it where we're
Actually, I
yeah.
do. The next part is going to start
We
getting
know what.
controversial.
Yeah, we know why it's controversial. Heritage America, of course, is most consistent with Anglo Protestantism. Yeah. Uh, but that does not mean that all groups outside of that core are equally dangerous to it. There's a spectrum at play wherein some peoples are less threatening to its ethos than others. There's a high correlation between that spectrum and the broadening circles extending out from Western Europe, such that peoples like Indians or Southeast Asians or Ecuadorians or immigrated Africans are the least capable of fitting in and should be sent home immediately.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah,
obviously,
that's controversial.
yeah. So obviously that's playing into the Trump's thing, right? They got to go back. I'm
They have to
obviously
go back.
playing into that.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
terms of actual policy, I think that's a really this is a really fascinating topic. Like how do we deal with it, because rather than just giving into the ratchet effect of these
Mm-hmm.
problems, is there any way to reverse it? And I think in
Yeah,
doing so, we can set priorities. Obviously,
yeah,
illegals, they got to go back first. And Neil Shenvi
yeah.
said he's in theory, he's okay with that. He already
Oh,
said that
that's
today.
how nice, how
Yeah.
nice.
So I mean, there are priorities. Another priority would be criminals, right? And then
Yeah.
people that are net tax, beneficiaries, like they don't give
Mm-hmm.
into the system. They would be another priority. I think I'm least interested in like good church going families. That doesn't really interest me,
Mm-hmm.
in breaking those up, or American heritage Americans that are married to an Indian. I don't have any interest in breaking up families or anything like that. But I think we
You're
do
not
need to
saying
talk
that.
about,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and I made it intentionally broad because I want people to think about the ratchet effect of these
Well,
things, you know.
and the question, I mean, just originally, like what American immigration policy was for the first nation of immigrants. Well, through the 19th century, right? Which peoples did they let into the United States? Right.
Mhm.
It's within that right here you have this Anglo-Saxon core of like England and like Western Germany, like Northwestern. That's Anglo-Saxon land,
I'm going to go
and
mute for
those are
1 second, but keep
okay.
going.
Those are the people they let in, and then slowly radiated outward a little bit more to the Irish, to Southern Europeans like Italians, um, to Swedes, right? Further and further out. And then in the 20th century, it expands wide open to everybody in every part of the world. And the question is, I mean, a question of culture and assimilation, right? Which peoples are capable of fitting in to the core group, right? The core ethnocultural group in America, which
Hmm.
was Anglo-Protestant, right?
Hmm.
That's that like it's an ethno-religious group, right? Which peoples were going to assimilate to that culture more readily, right?
Yeah.
Will a guy from at that point the Ottoman Empire, right?
Hmm.
Right, an Arab from the Ottoman Empire, will he fit in,
Yeah.
or will a Catholic from from Sicily, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's a pretty easy question to answer, right? Even though there are
Yeah, but not
there's
if not if
dissimilarities.
you but not if you're part of the cult that sees all individuals as interchangeable, as basically
Yeah,
machines that you
yeah,
can just like drop in, put down into the on the conveyor belt, and then like put in a new way of life. Like that's
yeah,
if you adopt that view, that enlightenment view of mankind, then you're going to be okay with this open border policy.
yeah. All people are the same. They're just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And so anyway, yeah. Whereas groups like Irish, Italians, Catholics may not fit the original core, but we're closer on the spectrum of being Europeans. All politics is contextual and situational. This is true. And here's what he says to that.
Yeah,
Engel explicitly denies that he is a racial essentialist. Correct, as do I. We both
I'm not.
deny this.
Yeah,
But his insistence that non-Europeans should be sent home immediately means that functionally he does not want to deport certain individuals based solely on their
he does
ethnicity,
want to. Yeah,
or he
he
does
does
want
want.
to. Yeah, sorry, he does. Well, and that's part, like, it's not merely racial, right? That's the point, right? Maybe Doug Wilson's black Nigerian lady, right? She doesn't have to go first, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, which people are like, okay, a black Nigerian, a Nigerian Anglican lady versus a Hindu from Mumbai, right? Which one has to go, right? If we have to
Yeah,
choose, which we only got one plane ticket back, right?
yeah,
We'll send it. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like, which people can assimilate to American culture more readily, more easily. And by American culture, we mean like historic American culture, not the globo post-war
correct.
whatever we got now.
Correct.
And so, interestingly, Engel also wrote an article explicitly denying my claim that there exists a woke right. First, he insists that the term woke is inapplicable to the right. Correct. Why his reasoning is fascinating. The left wants to deconstruct the West. The liberal center wants to deny the state the ability to defend the West. And the right wants to employ institutional and political resources to reassert the hegemonic character of the pre-World War II socio-political order. Yeah. Yeah.
Based.
I mean,
So,
it's basically like we want to use hegemonic power and
well,
power relations
but
to reassert our way of
yeah,
life.
my my
Oh
my
boy.
point was that you have to distinguish between the left and the right in this way. The
Yeah.
left's trying to liquidate our society. The right's trying to reassert our society. They're opposites.
They
You know,
sound the same to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, exactly. And the liberal senator is the, as James Burnham called it, the ideology of Western suicide, where it just doesn't want to do anything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But then why would people like DeYoung and Wilson and me independently recognize something we call woke right? Because you're liberals. That's why.
There you go. Yeah.
Right? Because you are
Well,
part of the center
read,
that wants to deny that. I mean, maybe not Doug.
read the next
Some.
sentence. Read the next
All right.
sentence.
Yeah. Engel explains the right wing is being called the woke right because its detractors cannot think outside the hegemonic presumptions of liberalism, which is grounded in individualism. Yes, correct. That's why. Boom. Podcast over. No, but he goes even farther, immediately affirming there is indeed a war on whites. Right?
Oh, you know what I wrote in the article? He didn't quote this. Interesting they left it out.
Not enough space, CJ.
I cited Jeremy Carl's book that, to my knowledge, has not been. Yeah. So there's a, and I don't think it's disputable now.
Man,
Jeremy
Neil's
Carl's book is the new
highlighter.
standard on this.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna get worn out. It's gonna get worn out, man. There is indeed a war on whites. Source Jeremy Carl. He argues that my characterization of the woke right is incorrect because a major faction of the power elite is made up of straight white men. And yet, since the old cultural hegemony of heritage America was centered around straight white men, it is clear that a revolution against that way of life would need to be directed against the hegemonic culture base made up of these types of people. It is not woke to recognize this. Yes, like wokeness is recognizing it and saying it's bad. It needs to be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's like the sine qua non of wokeness. It's these things are bad. We want to destroy them. But
this is a funny article because, like, if you read the rest of it, he's just quoting it and then he moves on. Like, I don't. It's not really
he doesn't refute it. It's like because he can't.
It's
I
like
don't
the greatest,
can he argue against it?
Greatest hits of Isker and Engel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Again, he writes the mythos of CJay writes this. The mythos of liberalism made the political leadership in this country blind to the actual leftist revolution in our midst. Also true. Liberalism is absolutely a hegemonic norm. What else would be America's hegemonic norm? He concludes that The right can see this very clearly, understands that power is needed to confront this new leftist hegemony. I don't know if that's your error or his. It's one word's out
Wait,
of order. Yeah, you have to go
the right
correct
to
it.
see this very clearly. It understands that powers needed to confront. Oh yeah,
Knew
it's
this.
probably
Yeah,
mine.
yeah.
It's probably mine.
It's all right.
I'm
Dyslexia is a
retarded.
thing. Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure
You know,
how else to respond to this article other than
you
to
know what's
point out.
interesting?
Oh yeah,
Okay, so
go ahead.
he leaves another thing out that's really important. Like I use the example of homosexuality.
Oh,
Um,
he
I
left that out.
said in pre-war America, American society was hegemonically biased against homosexual marriages, and it denied to those who believe in such a possibility the institutional means of actuating it. So, in other words,
Mm-hmm.
if you believe that homosexual marriage was a legitimate institution, the American political infrastructure denied to those people the ability to actuate their homosexual marriages. So it was hegemonically only heterosexual. So that was an example that I gave. How do you deny that? That's how it was.
Oh, it's gonna be hard. I mean, I guess there's not enough. I mean, maybe
I should
he's
use some of
running.
my examples.
He's probably just running short on storage space on his website and doesn't want to pay the extra, storage. I
We
guess
should
because
just
he's
copy and paste the
leaving
article next time.
leaving it out. Yeah. It's weird that he didn't link to it.
No, he did. He did.
Oh, he did. Okay, that's good. So read the link there. And so yeah, finally, I'm not sure how to respond to this article other than to point out that in it, Engel clearly and repeatedly affirms that my characterization of his beliefs is entirely accurate, even if he dislikes the term woke right. He believes that one, straight white men are the cultural center of America and are the target of the regime. Yeah. Normies are blinded by liberalism. Yep. Three, we can mobilize heritage Americans to act in their own group interest. And four, retake America. This is exactly what I identify as right-wing wokeness. Yeah, the problem, Neil, again, is that wokeness is the destruction of these things. Right? Wokeness is seeing these things as an enemy and trying to destroy American culture and society and to deconstruct it and make something, this grotesque new thing. Yeah. Right? And the right is saying, no, actually it's good. We like America the way it was.
Well, it's funny because like he thinks he's clever, but like if I came up with something like cultural communism, and I said, the definition of cultural communism is anything that Neil Shenvi writes, and then going forward, like every time he writes something, it's like he's just reinforcing my own definition of cultural communism.
Yeah.
I win.
Yeah. I guess.
So Stephen Wolf engaged with him on the White Woke right a couple days ago. I don't know if you saw it.
I did not know.
And Stephen's just like, yeah, you call me whatever you want. I don't care. This is typical
silly.
historical stuff.
Yeah, it's just silly. Finally, here we go. He's binding us all together into this conspiracy. Finally, I'd like to point out that I'm not fairly lumping people together who are not part of the same movement. Engel and Isker are podcast co-hosts. Hey, everybody. Wolf and the author of the Identity Dixie article were podcast co-hosts. Engel, Isker, and Wolf have all been interviewed and platformed by prominent Christian nationalists.
Who's a prominent Christian nationalist that platformed us?
I don't know. And next year, Wolf and Isker will be speakers at a conference with numerous Christian nationalists whose theme is Christ is King, How to Defeat Trash World. Please, by the way, everyone, please get your tickets for that. We'll provide. Let's. The link is in the article. So sign up now. It's going to be in Austin, Texas, or outside of Austin. I think Georgetown. And so you're all going to want to go to that. I mean, just look at the people like Steve Dace, Jeff Durbin, Orrin McIntyre, Stephen Wolf, yours truly, Brian Sauvé, Zach Garris, Joel Webbett, Eric Kahn, David Reese, John Harris, A. Robles, Dan Burkholder, Ben Garrett, and Dusty Devers. Right. So you're going to want to come check that out next year. It's next April. We'll promote it even more.
You guys paying Neil a commission for his promotions here?
Maybe we should. Therefore, to identify ideas common to these men and their fans seems entirely legitimate and even crucial if you want to understand their project. For positives, right? Should we selectively cut this out? All right, just skip over the positives. What the nice things he has to say?
No, I don't know. If you, I only have a couple more minutes.
Yeah, we want to get to your greatest hits.
We can do the dangers. Oh, we don't.
Yeah,
Oh, let's do a part two on this. This is a long article. I didn't realize how
yeah,
long
it's
this was.
it's it's a long article because yeah, we get into your disdain for rap music.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, that's a good time. That is a good time.
We're gonna have to do a part two for that one.
Is he gonna
What?
wait till he finds the silicone ring stuff?
Oh yeah, I mean it's over when he finds that. Yeah, man. Like all of
Wait,
this. I mean, yeah,
where was that? Oh yeah, so he's like, I was like jail time after the rap, and he's like, this is hopefully a hyperbolic statement. It's like, no, jail time.
jail,
Nope.
straight to jail if you listen to rap music. Right? We abide by the Greerhead pledge. Right? No weed, no rap music, no Marvel movies. Right? Or you go right to
Oh
jail.
yeah, this is a long article. We should do a part two.
We're gonna have to do a part two, maybe early next week.
Yeah.
But I know before we sign off here for the afternoon, we have a conference that you and I like. Neil doesn't, unfortunately, Neil's not promoting that one, but Steven, you and me are at the
And
conference. He maybe add it to the end. Who else?
no, yeah. He'll talk about it soon because well, yeah, I'm very excited to be speaking alongside of yourself, Stephen Wolf, Paul Gottfried, Ryan McCubbin over at True Texas Project. He's done a really good job, and they're a good group of guys, good group of people. I'm really excited to speak for them.
Yeah.
So if you're in the Dallas area, I think it's July 13th, 12th or 13th, whatever that Saturday is, July 12th or 13th. We'll be in Dallas. But go to just Google True Texas Project. I got two topics. One of them is an introduction to the new right, what it means. The second one is critiquing multiculturalism and discussing the war on white America.
And mine, my big one, I think I have two as well. I have to go double check because I have to do some work on them. But my big one that I'm going to spend a lot of time on is dispensationalism and the future of American evangelicalism and the political future of American evangelicalism. And it's a very timely topic, right now, especially with infinity billions of dollars going to Israel and to Gaza. Apparently, we have to be involved in that because God's chosen people, right? And so we're going to talk about that, and I'm looking forward to maybe I'll use a woke word, deconstructing dispensationalism's grip on American evangelicalism. So that'll be that conference is going to be great. And the regret I have is I think some of our talks are scheduled to overlap, so I won't get to see some. I won't get to. I think maybe Stevens or Paul's. I won't get to see everything. So I'm like, man, that's a huge bummer because I want to see these other guys because the stuff they're going to say is so good. I think is it like $50 a ticket, and it's a fundraiser for
and support them. Seriously, they're good people.
Yeah. And so well worth it. I mean, other conferences and things like that are much more expensive, and definitely if you're in the if you're in the area, it's I think Plano, Texas is where it's going to be. Texas is a big state, but if you're able to drive to it, definitely go because the work these guys do, I mean, it's really impressive. Real grassroots political organizing. I mean, stuff people on the right consistently fail at doing the dirty work of signing people up to be election judges and to register people to vote. Right? We don't do that stuff, and these guys are. And Texas, of course, is an extremely important state, and we want to support them. So please check that out. True Texas Project. We'll be there speaking next month. And anything else, CJay, you want to promote? Any articles coming out? You have one soon, right? Are you able to talk about it? I think
next Monday or Tuesday, I will have my response to the Ad Fontes Journal piece on Carl Schmitt. So that'll be out on American Reformer. So I'll tweet it out next week, but I finally got around to finishing it. I've been focusing a lot on the immigration issue, obviously, and defining America. So I'll keep tackling those things, but the Schmitt one needed to be responded to. So
yeah, absolutely. And so check that out. We're going to continue to have more content. Who's our special guest for this month? Do we have one scheduled yet?
Oh,
let's
talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Oh,
Off air, you mean?
yes, yes, yes. Let's talk about that. I
All
forgot. I
right.
totally forgot. I've been so busy. I'm sorry.
We were in Ogden for like a
I
week,
know.
and that it was great. So we'll have to do more production stuff later on. But yeah, we'll have another special guest for the month of June for all of our wonderful, awesome subscribers. That'll be for them, and we appreciate all of you. If you enjoyed this discussion, share it, have people see it, get in front of more people, because we are, we're in the vanguard here. We're at the very tip of the spear of these ideas, right?
Yeah,
Like the stuff that we're thinking about and talking about and digging through is making its way slowly toward the mainstream, and ultimately that's why like people like Neil Shenvi and others are afraid. All right, they're afraid that ideas that we have, very old ideas, right, not new ideas, very very old ones, are reemerging and will find some space in the consciousness of the political right, and that's very dangerous to those who worship the post-war order, right?
yeah.
Post-war liberalism. They're terrified of it coming apart, and so share it, like, subscribe, do all of that stuff, just so stuff gets out there. Like we do this because we want we want people to think about these things, right?
Hmm.
Because it's been withheld from you for your entire lifetime, right? You're only allowed to watch Fox News. You're only allowed to watch Sean Hannity,
Yeah,
and here are ideas that are maybe a little bit better. We'll put it that way.
yeah,
So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. We'll have part two hopefully next week
yeah. Let's do that.
sometime. And until then, unfortunately, not enough time for we're all going to make it to join us. I sent the invite and he hasn't responded. So maybe next time we'll have time for him. But otherwise, thank you all for watching, for listening. And please stay peacefully dangerous. And we will see you next time.